we deal with people's money, and so we have a very big responsibility. And I always wanted to make sure from the very beginning that we had a structure, being a shareholding structure on one side, but also a management structure that ensured that there was not one person, there was not like a real key man risk. Obviously, there are some key man risks, but I wanted those key man risks to be manageable. And the way to do it is to make sure that you have several incredibly strong people that manage the company and understand what's happening, and they can take more responsibilities if required.
Welcome to Entrepreneurism. I'm your host, Scott Pollock, a seasoned business leader, entrepreneur, and CEO coach with a passion for helping others achieve success in their entrepreneurial journeys. On this show, we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, uncovering why so many struggle and revealing what the most successful do differently. True entrepreneurs have unique superpowers, including the ability to spot hidden business opportunities and convert them into thriving ventures. For most mere mortals, this ability is absolutely unfathomable. But these same strengths can become sources of struggle, whether it's pursuing multiple opportunities without losing focus, scaling without eroding culture, or balancing short-term demands with long-term vision. The entrepreneur's journey is full of tensions. Here we explore critical factors that drive entrepreneurial success: how to stay focused, manage resources, build strong teams, and develop the resilience to navigate the ups and downs of the journey. Bold ideas, candid conversations, and insights that will help you unlock your full potential. Ready to learn and grow, expand your toolkit, and discover actionable strategies to help you navigate your own entrepreneurism? Let's dive in. Really excited to welcome one of my clients on the show. Michele Ferrario is a fintech visionary and a seasoned startup and scale-up CEO. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you very much, Scott. Nice to be here.
A little more background. Michele is co-founder and CEO of StashAway, Southeast Asia and the Middle East's largest digital wealth manager, with the mission of empowering people to build their wealth for the long term. Before co-founding StashAway in 2016, Michele spent the early part of his career in and around financial services as a consultant to large financial institutions at McKinsey and as a private equity investor. He spent the next part of his career building consumer internet companies as managing director at Rocket Internet and as group CEO of Zalora, where he scaled Zalora's business only a mere 15 times. So, Michele, perhaps you can talk briefly about how you started your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. So again, thank you for having me here. Look, my entrepreneurial journey has been a little bit of a path that took several steps. It's not that I didn't drop out of college to be an entrepreneur, but actually took the whole career to get where I am. And it was never my objective. It's not that I wanted to be an entrepreneur since the get-go. It just happened that I found myself starting a company in 2016. So in short, what happened is that if you, in a hindsight, looking back, every experience built some level of confidence that allowed me at a certain point to say, maybe now I can build something for myself. And that's what happened when together with Nino and Freddie, we started StashAway in 2016. And I can go in more details about how I met Nino and Freddie, etc. in a second. As you mentioned earlier, I started at McKinsey. And if you asked me back then what I wanted to do long-term, my answer would have been, I want to be a partner at McKinsey. Then I went to private equity. And if you asked me back then what I wanted to do long-term, I would have told you I want to be a private equity partner. And then I joined Rocket Internet, which has been maybe the most important step into embracing a more entrepreneurial career path. Because at Rocket, my job was initially to launch new companies on behalf of Rocket. And then Rocket asked me to become the CEO of Zalora. And so my job has been to scale up a company that Rocket had founded and kind of make it bigger, make sense economically. And obviously those experiences, first of all, enabled me to learn how you do that, how you build a company, how you scale a company. And secondly, create a little bit of a level of confidence in the fact that I could do that. And so how then I ended up saying, okay, now is the time to do something from scratch is, again, it was not planned. I was leaving Zalora and Rocket for a number of reasons. I had this personal problem of what to do with my savings. I was in my mid-30s at the time, and I was very unhappy with how the banks were mistreating me in managing my own savings. I had 2 kids. I was working very long hours, so I didn't have the time to kind of, I didn't want to trade by myself. Also, I didn't think that was the right thing to do. I wanted to just invest, methodically in basket ETFs, and the banks made it impossible or very difficult to do it. And so when I left Zalora Rocket, and I was thinking about, okay, what do I do now? And I did have a few calls with headhunters, and I did explore, more managerial paths. But I had this idea in mind of, I knew that there was this issue, in Southeast Asia. The financial system was not really helping people like me manage their money. And so I had this in the back of my mind, and I thought, look, I've been building and helping Rocket build companies for the last 5 years. Maybe I now have learned a thing or two about it, and maybe I know what, how to make it happen. And then maybe there's the good chances there, and maybe I found an empty space that deserves building. And so what I did is that I started thinking, okay, if I want to do something from scratch, so I know what I don't know. And, I don't know much. I'm a generalist, but I'm not, I don't know much. And so I wanted to build a digital wealth management platform. And I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a CTO. I'm not an engineer, and I'm not an investor. And so I thought, okay, I need a tech co-founder and an investment co-founder, just to complement my more generalist skills. And so I reached out to Nino, whom I was introduced to a year earlier. I hadn't met yet, and we met for coffee. And I told him that I thought there was an opportunity to build a digital web manager in Singapore. He was surprised there was nobody else doing it. He was familiar with the business model from Europe. And so we had a coffee one day, coffee the second day. We actually ended up having coffees every day for 5 days. And at the end of the week, I kind of convinced him that the idea made some sort of sense. I really, really, really enjoyed my interaction with him. Apparently, he enjoyed his interaction with me as well, because we in practice decided, okay, let's do this. And it was very quick. Like this happened in, I met him for the first time on the 19th of July, 2016. And by the end of that week, we said, okay, let's do this. And what we said is, okay, let's, Nino was going to start looking for a UX designer, a user interface designer to hire.
Yep.
And I was going to spend time trying to find an investment co-founder, like a chief investment officer type of profile. And so as I was reaching out to people and kind of talking to a bunch of people, I at a certain point, one of the designers Nino was talking to told us, hey, you need to meet this guy named Freddie, who, he's an experienced investor, left Nomura, where he was a managing director, and wants to do something entrepreneurial.
Right.
So I met Freddie for a coffee. This was scheduled to be an hour, ended up being 3.5 hours of problem solving on how you do this. And I remember walking out of that Starbucks saying, okay, we need to do this. I think at this point we have the right team. So maybe the last piece of starting entrepreneurial journey has been, I found 2 people, Nino and Freddie, that I thought complement fantastically my experience, and that I really enjoyed spending the limited time at that time I spent with them. And I thought, okay, I can spend 12 hours a day working with these guys. I can disagree with these guys. I can discuss with these guys, and we agree we're very different. German engineer, an Italian generalist, and a Malaysian investor, but we also have a lot of common ground that hopefully will help us in the ups and downs.
So, and a number of things that I just want to recount here. I mean, I love and I totally believe the same way that you can't connect the dots unless you're looking back. I guess there's the Steve Jobs quote along that lines, but I mean, it really makes perfect sense. I mean, that careers kind of do build on each other, but we don't know as we're experiencing it exactly where we're headed necessarily, not all the time, certainly. And then you finding a need and a personal need that wasn't being solved by the marketplace, and deciding that's the impetus for being an entrepreneur, which I think that is common to most entrepreneurs. It's seeing that opportunity in the marketplace, the need that's not being served, and then more importantly, being able to do something about it and doing something about it, and that's really where the entrepreneurial journey starts, and then finding your co-founders. I mean, it sounds like there was quite a bit of serendipity there. But at the same time, you ended up, finding a couple of co-founders who really complemented your skills, and you were able to get off and running. And I believe that the three of you all went full time at this from the beginning, which is not always the case in a lot of these founder stories, where one founder or another or multiple founders keep their day jobs and they work on this on the side. It sounds like you guys were able, from what I remember of the story, to really launch in together.
Yes.
One question about that, you mentioned that you definitely three strong-minded, different points of view, which I think is great. It makes for a rich leadership team, but at the same time, talk about how you manage the inevitable conflicts and how did that work within the context of the three founders and you being the CEO?
Yes, the reality is that we had a lot of conversation and discussions where maybe we brought to the table different points of views. I struggle to think about actual real conflicts that we had. And this, I think, partially because of my management style. I mean, you know it well, Scott, and I give a lot of importance to building consensus, which has pros and cons, of course. It sometimes may slow you down. But I say, and building consensus doesn't mean that every time we all need to agree on everything, but it means that everybody really needs to understand why we're doing something, and why a decision is made. And I think that helped a lot. Plus, Nino and Freddie are, super nice, super intelligent, super deep on their own domains. And I think obviously that helped those conversations. And maybe lastly, because we were three different, we brought to the table three different set of skill sets.
Okay.
And so, each of us, I think, trusted a lot the others on what they brought to the table. On tech, I trusted Nino to make the right calls. We discussed some of it, whatever I could understand. But at the end of the game, if he told me, hey, I think A is better than B, and so even if I initially thought B, I would actually, try to understand it. But at a certain point, I would, again, as much as I could understand, just go with whatever. I really trusted him, and the same for the investment side with Freddie. And I think, probably if you ask the same question to them, they will tell you, because I was managing the compliance side, the regulatory side, the marketing side, etc. On all of these sides, I did consult them. I did get their perspective. We did have discussions about it, but I think at the same time, they trusted my perspective, my gut feel, my intuition. And that's, I think, the advantage of having three co-founders that come with different background. As an angel investor myself in other companies, one thing I've seen going wrong is co-founders that are too similar to each other, and bring to the table very similar competencies. And then sometimes they just, things just get difficult because you have different perspectives and there's not a clear owner of the topic, and then it becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
But honestly, I've been extremely lucky. And you mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of serendipity in meeting Nino and Freddie. Yes. If you tell me, hey, can you start it StashAway again today? Can you build it better? My answer is, of course I can build it better. There's a number of things now I know that I didn't know 9 years ago that we could do better. The one thing that I don't know how I could replicate is meeting Nino and Freddie. That was a lot of luck.
Yeah. I like that, and I like the point that you've made that ownership, or what I would call accountability for the various functions in the business, was clear. Of course, it was easier for you and your partners to figure out who's accountable for what based on those unique skills. Like you, I've seen a number of companies where that accountability is not clear, and that causes a lot of discourse. So, discord, actually, I should say. What would you say? You came through a range of previous experiences. You learned about finance. You learned about starting companies, scaling companies, and you had mentors along the way. I take it that helped you there. But looking at you specifically as an entrepreneur, when you finally started your business, now you've been growing this now for 9 years. What would you say is your entrepreneurial superpower? The thing that really propels you forward, and how have you leveraged it? I mean, that's one of the key questions that I like to get into for the podcast, to help other people to unpack what it is that they think they bring to the entrepreneurial experience.
Look, obviously, there are certain things I do well and others that I don't do as well. Um, I guess if you ask me what is the core skills or the core characteristics that enabled me to, be relatively successful, um, uh, I think it's the ability to attract a certain level of talent and being able to empower these people, work with them, make sure they can coexist, and kind of range a team that is very, very strong. And I think there is, again, two components. One is attracting them, convincing them of joining, and the second one is manage them over time, making sure they have the right set of motivation. They enjoy what they're doing, and they feel that the environment allows them to thrive and to learn and to grow. I think that's maybe the most important trait. I think the other one that I brought to the specific table of StashAway with Nino and Freddie has been maybe, and this comes maybe from my McKinsey private equity background, is a little bit of a strategic insight and kind of ability to look a bit in the future and create a narrative that people understand about that
Yeah,
future. And this helps obviously when you speak to investor. It helps when you recruit, to convince people that that there is a story to be written here. And I think so that's maybe the other element.
yeah, and interestingly enough, I mean, as I'm listening to this, I mean that ticks the three key accountabilities as I see it for just about any CEO, which is getting the right people on the bus, in the right seats, doing the right things, creating the cultural foundation for them to be comfortable and to be able to achieve what they need to achieve, and setting the vision and the strategy. It's hard. I'd say on all three of those, it's hard for the head of the business, which is really the role, to delegate any of that. So, being that you brought some natural talent around those things, that's certainly an advantage. What would you say has been your greatest personal struggle then? As you've gone through this journey, and how did you conquer it?
Uh, Personal struggle. I think it's maybe the other side of what we discussed, right? So when you empower a group of people and you empower specific individuals on certain accountabilities,
Hmm.
you need to give some leeway. And I think in 99% of the cases, if I look back, I have been very happy to have done that. There is a couple of instances I don't want to go into details of where maybe it was a mistake to leave a bit too much responsibility.
Mm,
But finding that right balance is very difficult, because obviously it's difficult to understand those trade-offs
yeah,
before they happen. And so it's easier to look back. But so finding that right balance of, enabling entrepreneurship uh, across the company with different people, while at the same time maintaining a certain level of control and personal responsibility on some of the decisions, and maybe may and be very open about disagreements. is maybe the one, finding the right balance is tricky sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, and it reminds me. I mean, one of the books that I had you and the leadership team at StashAway read is "Turn the Ship Around," and that kind of balance between control, giving up control versus retaining control based on the capability of the person that you're dealing with. It's challenge, right? I mean, because you're trying to assess that capability oftentimes before you've had a chance to see them in full action. But I think, the other thing that brings to mind for me is I oftentimes tell leaders that you've really got to understand the difference between delegation and abdication, and that's so critical because
Absolutely.
abdicating anything in your business is really not the best way to lead.
No, absolutely. I agree. I agree 100%. And finding, the right balance, again, the
Yeah.
right path is obviously easier said than done, right? In practice, when you're talking about human um, kind of personal relationships and in your which you're building from scratch every time, it is a path that you need to walk in order to then find the right balance. I don't think it's easy. Yeah.
Yeah. So that actually leads nicely into perhaps a discussion of how you've been able to build a really effective leadership team, in my opinion, certainly, that is enabling you to elevate your focus, at this point in the business. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I think about it is that when we started the company, each of us, Nino, myself, and Freddie, mostly me, Nino and I actually had multiple hats. So, I was the CEO, but I also was the CMO. I was the CFO. I was in practice the chief compliance officer. And Nino was the chief product officer on top of the CTO, and it was also the chief operating officer, right? And then as we built, we started giving some of these hats away. The initial one that I gave away was the chief compliance officer because for regulatory reason we needed a person with a certain experience, and that was done before we launched actually. And then a couple of years later, I gave away the marketing hat, and then over time, and we kept doing it. We kept the C-suite
Mhm.
relatively small. So even to today, it's 6 people, with a couple of people that are kind of a quasi C-suite, but let's call it six, officially 6 people right now. So we kept it small, and for instance, I still 9 years into this, I still have the CFO hat. So I still kept it because I didn't found a reason to hire a full-time person to take that job, and it's something I'm happy to do it. It's been important to do it in phases and to do it kind of slow. Again, it's been 9 years, right? So this happened over a period of time,
Mhm.
because I think it allowed us to kind of create the structure and then place and find the right person for that structure over time, and it allowed us to again attract the right caliber of people that maybe we would not have been able to attract at the beginning, especially because you then need different people. The chief marketing officer that we need today is very different from the chief marketing officer that I was in 2017. And obviously, the one we have today is much better than me. But most importantly, but probably he would have not been the right person
Right.
in such an early stage startup, right? Just it's where you need to be more scrappy and just a different type of profile, a different type of experiences. And so I think that has been very instrumental. And I've always wanted to make sure we had, because we are a financial institution, I always thought we need, and we deal with people's money. And so we have a very big responsibility. And I always wanted to make sure from the very beginning that we had a structure, being a shareholding structure on one side, but also a management structure that ensured that there was not one person, there was not like a real key man risk. Obviously, there are some key man risks, but I wanted those key man risks to be manageable. And
Right.
the way to do it is to make sure that you have several incredibly strong people that manage the company and understand what's happening, and they can take more responsibilities if required. And that's one of the reasons why 5 years ago, for instance, we hired Nandini, who's currently the deputy CEO of the company, we hired as a COO. She took on some responsibilities from Nino, the COO that Nino had, some responsibilities from me. And then since then, she took on more and more and more responsibilities, and kind of, maybe parts, maybe not full hats, but, a lot of pieces of my hats, until in practice now, she took on, the complete responsibility over the day-to-day management of the business. It's the person that I spend the most time with the management team right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And grooming, Nandini, she's been on, the C-suite for a long time now and worked with you for a long time and building that trust. I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs would like to have. I think one of the things that's clear here is that it does take time. This was not something that happened overnight.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at the current C-suite, I think the person that spent the least time with the company spent close to 4 years.
Mhm.
So there is this is not a team that was formed the day before yesterday. This has taken quite a bit of time. And the other things that I try to do is, for example, I invite the C-suite to attend all the board meetings. Um, uh, when we had the opportunity recently, we actually asked Nandini to officially step into a directorship role at the board level. So she now sits as a director, and so those are again things that require time, require the right opportunity, and I think it gives all of the C-suite participating to the board meeting. It gives them a sense that they know exactly, the context of every decision we make. So when we then have a C-suite meeting where we make decisions on our strategy, there is a lot of context to come from the discussion that happened at the board with our core shareholders or the representative of the core shareholders on the board. And that's, I think, important. It makes everybody's job easier in a way because you have all the context, but also more interesting because then you can connect the dots.
Absolutely. And that's transparency that I think you don't see in many companies. Oftentimes it's the head of the business's role to try and take that and communicate it to the C-suite, if you will. But what you're doing, I think gives them also a lot more confidence that they're really seeing it in real time and that they're a part of it. And even if they're not officially on the board, I like that. I think that that's something that should be done probably more often where possible. So that's kind of a great practice. I want to do a few quick fire sort of entrepreneur hacks, something I like to do on the show. What's one book every entrepreneur should read?
I don't think I have a book. There's a few. So I think I really, really, really enjoyed Radical Candor
Mm,
as
Kim
a
Scott.
book. Kim Scott as a book to think about culture, because I do think if you ask me a different question, if you ask me what is the most important thing in building a company, I think it's hiring the right people and set the right culture. And I think Radical Candor should be a book not only that every entrepreneur should read, but I think that every entrepreneurial team should read. It's a great
Mm,
book for the first 10 people in a company to discuss what type of company you want to build from a cultural perspective. But then there are also more, operational. Actually, not a fun book to read, but I think the 3-hack book that you made us read when we started working with you is a very important one. Or there are also some other templates, but this is a great template to just think about how you operationalize kind of the planning and the management of the company. So I think that's
yeah.
that's another great book. And then actually one business book that actually two more I can tell you, two more business books that I really really like, and I think depending on what you do are very important. One is The Goal, which
Yeah.
I don't think The Goal
Classic.
is a book only for people managing logistics. I think this actually has a lot of implications in everything you do. This concept of the theory of constraints, and it's an easy read. It's fun to read. So I find it. And then the other one is pick one of the Jim Collins,
Yeah.
Good to
Of
Great
course.
type
Great by
series. I think that's
choice, which if you're an entrepreneur is
yeah,
maybe
exactly.
one of the better ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Of
So
course.
any of those I think are quite interesting. Yes. Sorry, I gave you a long answer. I know you
No,
wanted one, but
that's okay. And Shannon Sesko's 3-Hag Way, less familiar for a lot of the listeners perhaps, but yeah, I like that as a foundation for tying strategy to execution, and I think it's an effective
yeah.
book for that. What's one thing you do every morning to set yourself up for success?
I try to exercise for 15, 20 minutes every morning. And I don't do it every morning. I try to. And I think that's actually, and it's a recent thing. I started doing it maybe a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
It's a post-COVID actually, so maybe now it's 3 years. It's a post-COVID thing, and I think actually has a gigantic impact on me. I mean, I've always been doing sports, but it becomes obviously more and more difficult to find the time, you know, job and 4 kids. But I think finding those 20 minutes every morning, honestly,
Yeah.
everybody can.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and actually makes a big. And if you do it every day, it actually makes a gigantic difference in terms of level of energy, how you feel. It just you can see the results quite quickly.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And for me, it's if when I'm traveling, which I don't do a whole lot of, but when I'm traveling, I always try to find a hotel with a pool so I can hop in the pool. That's for me the ideal 20-minute workout. So yeah, no, that's perfect. What's a tool or app you can't live without?
So look, recently, I think what's happening with AI is mind blowing.
Mm,
And so I think, I use Gemini the most, the
mhm.
Google AI tool. And I think that it's now at a level that is really, really, really helping me be more efficient, and not just more efficient, also more effective
Yep.
in many instances. So probably that's the one thing
Yeah.
I would mention today. The other one is Google Calendar, maybe more basic, but I live by the calendar. So
The basic tools, sometimes the most basic is the most necessary. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And these days AI, yeah, it's I feel like I'm a cyborg at this point, integrated together with the machine. What daily habit keeps you grounded?
so I try to spend. So I have 4 kids, as I mentioned earlier, and
Yeah.
I try to spend time with my kids. My free time in practice is 100% spent with my kids.
Yep.
And I think that's the best way to keep you in check for 2 reasons. One is that because when you are, especially with younger kids, there's no way you can think about something else. They will spot you right away. So it's a good way to just refresh your mind and kind of focus on something else. And secondly, because they're honest, they don't care about what you do in your daily life, whether you're important or not important, whether you're smart or not smart, whether
That they
you
are.
did something you did something well or not today. Whether it doesn't matter. What matters is right now. What are you doing? You're making me happy or not? Are you with me or not? Are you helping me or not? And I think it's great. I think I think it adds another dimension to who I am.
Yeah, I love that. I'm ear to ear, smiles. I only have the one daughter, but I can totally relate. I can totally relate. And last question here: what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
So, as I mentioned earlier, I spent 5 years at Rocket Internet, and the
Mhm.
founder of Rocket Internet, Oliver Samwer, is probably the most impressive person I've worked with in my career. Not one for mentoring and coaching, is
Mhm.
more of let's get things done now in the next 3 seconds and let's not think about it too much type of person. But there was one time in my early days at Rocket, I think I was there, first year at Rocket, and we had this weekly call with all the managing directors, and usually was very execution focused. But one day, just before Christmas, for some reason, Oliver Samwer was in a mentoring or in a different mood than usual, and he said, "As an entrepreneur, if every day you make 2 steps forward and 1 step backward, you're fine. You're going in the right direction." And it's important because the reality is that as an entrepreneur, you'll make a lot of steps backward.
Mhm.
And unless you can put it in a certain frame and you can think about it as, okay, it's part of the process, there will be some steps back. Then it's tough to go ahead. It's tough to find the stamina and the grit and the energy to keep going. So actually, I think it was not framed as an advice. It was more of a statement, but I think it was actually great advice.
Yeah. No,
So two steps back,
it's
2 steps forward, 1 step backward is good. I think that's the short answer to
yeah,
your question.
it's a good mantra. I agree for an entrepreneur to keep you going. Excellent. So perhaps one closing question for today. You mentioned earlier that if you were to do StashAway all over again, that you probably couldn't do any better in terms of the co-founders that you found, but that there would be perhaps some things that you would do differently. So, I guess the question is, what's one thing that, if you could start StashAway all over and you knew everything that you know today, what's one thing, one lesson that you would bring with you in restarting?
So to be honest, I don't have one thing that I'm like, okay, clearly we could have done that differently.
Mhm.
I think in general, and I don't know if it would be possible given our business model, but in general, the one suggestion I give to founders is try to raise as little capital as possible, or better said, try to spend as little money as possible, and then raise as much capital as you need and you can, but try to be as frugal as possible. This is something that we've always been trying to do. So we've always
Mhm.
been extremely careful with spending, and we've been frugal in many, many ways. I don't know if there could have been a way to do it even more. There was a period in 2021 when, this was at the peak of the tech craziness, and everybody was overspending. And so when you have your competitors overspending, and everybody, and your investor telling you, hey, you need to spend more, you need to invest more, etc., there was maybe a period of 6 months where we kind of got uh, taken away. So maybe but in general, I think the idea of be extremely frugal and be careful with every dollar you spend. I think that's maybe the one thing I would do even more than we did.
Absolutely. So if you can keep your cash needs under control, that
Right.
means that you're going to have a lot less pressure, because there's always going to be ups and
Correct.
downs.
Correct. It
Absolutely.
gives a lot of freedom, right? It
Yeah.
buys you freedom. It buys you freedom. While if you become if you are a slave of the capital markets, then capital markets are very volatile in their views of the world, and so
Yep. They're
then
fickle.
they become a slave of that volatility.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, really appreciate you joining today, Michele. Every conversation that we have, I enjoy your perspectives, and it's a variety of perspectives. And this conversation was no exception. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I hope this was helpful for some new founders that want to build something great.
I have no doubt. And to my listeners, we've got many more amazing guests lined up. Please subscribe, leave feedback, and share this episode in your feeds. Until next time. Thanks for listening. Remember, entrepreneurship isn't just about spotting opportunities. It's about taking disciplined action to bring them to life. Hope you'll join again next time as we continue to unpack the complexities of entrepreneurism.